Hi, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about swivel seats. This is for a 2013 Sprinter Mercedes-Benz 170 wheelbase, although we'll talk about Ford Transits a little bit as well. And for swivel seats, we're going to be primarily talking about Scopema and a little bit about Sportscraft, and some general issues that apply to any swivel seat, really, because there's some few problems that you run into as you do the install. But let's just jump to the summary right off the bat. That way, if you don't want to watch the rest of the video, you don't have to. The summary is passenger seats over here are great, easy to install, plug and play, no problems. Driver's side seat, kind of a pain in the neck, and the major problem, the emergency brake getting in the way, is a problem that there is no good answer for, and no matter what you do, it kind of sort of does work, kind of sort of doesn't work, and is going to be a pain in the neck to get it to really work, and just not worth it. I'm going to say after having done this. And you know, the problem, again, isn't with the swivel seats specifically, it's with the placement of the emergency brake. So this is applicable to any swivel seat. It doesn't matter which brand you buy. And I think that this is a problem that I know is a problem for the Sprinters, obviously, after watching several other videos and reading through forums and all the rest of it. And from what I've gathered, this is also a problem for the Ford Transits. I'm not sure about the other types of vans, but if you've got an emergency brake and it's here, which it probably is, then it's going to be a problem. The driver's seat. Skip the driver's seat. Passenger seat, great, no problem. Where I'm sitting right now, great, do it, not a problem. So that's the summary. That's the conclusion. Now let's get into the details of how we got there. There's a lot of links below. I'm going to make a lot of references to various other videos and websites and whatever. So please do read the details down below the video, right down there. There'll be a bunch of more information. So how did I get here? Well, I started looking around, reading reviews, that kind of stuff, and I read a review from FarOutRides.com. It's Isabella and Antoine. They've got a Ford Transit, and they reviewed 4 different types of seats. Their website's great. They've got a ton of stuff out there, so please, check it out. If you're doing van conversions, any kind of DIY, that kind of thing, check that out. It's well worthwhile. It's a great reference just to get you started. So they recommended the Scopema seats over the 3 others. And they give all kinds of details, measurements, links, So I picked them because they are the thinnest vertically, so the seat would stay the furthest down possible. That's part of what turned me on. Now, unfortunately, Scopemas are a little bit more expensive than most of the others if you're buying, we'll say by about $60 each seat, right? So 100 and whatever, 120, 130, 140 bucks if you get both. That's about the price point difference that you're talking about between, say, Sportscraft and Scopema. So that's not great. I didn't love that, but I started looking around some more, and I found that the Sportscraft ones, which there's a very good video by a gentleman whose handle is Humble Road. I'm not sure what his actual name is. He's got a bunch of videos. He's doing a lot of DIY Sprinter van conversion stuff. So if you have a Sprinter, you're doing a conversion yourself, great YouTube channel, Humble Road, and again, link below. And he got the Sportscraft one, and he was reviewing that, and he was saying that a lot of the drill holes were kind of a little off, so he had to re-drill them, and that was just for the seat plate. And then there was stuff like that going on, so it was kind of low quality. He wasn't totally happy with it. So I think from that standpoint, the Scopema stuff seems to be of higher quality. It's a European company. I want to say it's French. Not totally sure about that, but I want to say it's French. So anyway, I opted for the Scopema. So then I started hunting around trying to get a good price on the Scopemas. And unfortunately, their distribution is very restricted. There's really only a couple of places to get it. I wound up on eBay. I was trying, kind of going around there. eBay only had a few things, and so I kind of made an order. I got in touch with the guy who was, the seller, and through my conversations with him, I wound up by buying not just the passenger seat, but I bought both seats because that's what he had in stock. And so I wound up by buying both seats as one thing, and I wound up by not buying it through eBay, by buying it through him directly. And that was a little bit cheaper. Not a lot cheaper. Both seats still ended up by running me just under $800. Ouch. But shipping is a real thing. These things are 25 to 30 pounds each. It's 50 to 60 pounds of material that's getting shipped. So shipping it's a thing. So anyway, if you want to order Scopema seats directly, its company's name is Travios. Again, link is down below, Travios.ca. They're based out of Richmond, British Columbia, Canada. The only retail outlet in the US, I believe, is in Iowa. But anyway, so I got in touch with Brad at Travios, and that worked out just fine, really quick on the delivery, and he's very responsive, very helpful, you know, as much as he can. And you know, kind of until I came to the installation portion and the troubles that I ran into there, which we'll get into momentarily. So in doing the install, again, passenger seat, no problem, slapped it in, plug and play, just screwed everything in, no problems. And there's actually two different positions. You can see I got the handle here in front of me. That was my preferred position. I think you're supposed to put it off on the left-hand side here, which means that it would, when in forward position, the button would be sticking out into this center area, which I didn't want because I walk through here all the time. So I didn't want that. I wanted it in the front. That works fine on the passenger seat. Not so much on the driver's seat. Driver's seat, because of the steering wheel, there's only one position that this thing works in. Otherwise, you hit the steering wheel and you can't get it to swivel around. So you have to put the lever off on the side here, right in between the seat and the emergency brake, which is kind of an obvious problem because you're going to smack your hand into it all the time when you get the emergency brake up and down. So that's a problem, but there's no great solution there. It is what it is. The next issue that you run into is that the seats themselves, you do have to cut off about 1 inch off the side piece right here. So both sides of the seat, little plastic piece comes down a little bit too far to get it to swivel. It ends up by hitting the white base. So that's no good. Just cut that off. That's pretty easy. Just get an oscillator, straight line, take off about 1 inch. There's even like a little divot place. Makes it easy. Not a big deal. You have to do that for the passenger seat too. But if you just do the passenger seat, that's going to be the hardest thing you run into. Not that bad. Do the driver's seat, do the same thing. Not that big of a deal. Then you move on. And this is where you run into the major problem, which is the emergency brake. The emergency brake seems to be a problem that nobody has a good solution for. You know, solutions range between Scopema's solution, which is that they give you this little leather thing. They tell you to just, you know, rip off this black plastic thing that goes over the back, which is not that hard. There's a button right here that plugs in. So you just reach down at the bottom, pull it out, and then slide it back, and it just pops right off. You got the two bolts here. They're 10 mil, 1.5 thread, and you can just pull those out, and the whole thing comes off. But anyway, Scopema just wants you to pull that off and then throw this little leather thing over the top, like so. The problem with that is that when you swivel the seat, even if you jack it all the way up, which you kind of have to do, right? Jack it up, and you go to swivel the seat, it still ends up by hitting right here. When you go to put it back into position, it catches here and just drags along for about 1 inch. And if you got a piece of leather on top of that, that's going to catch, and that's a problem. So their solution is a solution. It's not a great solution. So if you look at the Sportscraft one, what they do is they give you a small metal adapter plate, which is 2 inches by 2 inches by, we'll say, about 1/4 inch. And that goes in right here between the white, you know, manufacturer bolt-in part and the emergency brake. And what that does is it drops down the back hinge piece here by about 1 inch. That's very important. It is 1 inch, not more, not less. It is a 1 inch exactly. And that's important for the rest of the adjustment that you have to do. I want to kind of do a little plug or shout out for Tim from Tim and Shannon. His YouTube video on how to deal with all this was really great, very instrumental, but he does undersell how difficult it is to do this portion. The reason being is that once you get the adapter plate in here, and you got to go buy a couple of, well, if you do the Sportscraft, you can just use what they give you. If you do the Scopema, I'd run off to the metal shop, get a 2 by 2 inch piece of aluminum, and then start drilling holes and do a little tap and die work to be able to screw in these 10 millimeter 1.5 thread. So a little bit more work. I did do it. That's this piece of aluminum that you see right here. Unfortunately, I overshot. I did 1.5 inches, thinking that would be better. Ran into problems further down the road, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Tim, great video. Again, URL is down below. And he shows you how to do this. Because when you do this, when you put in the adapter plate, even if you just use the Sportscraft one, it drops it down 1 inch. That's great. The back end here is down. Problem is that the wire has a really stiff, hard harness on it. The black part that's down here that runs into the floor, and it will not let you adjust downwards. Little problem, right? Because you pivoted the back end down, which means that now the front end is up, and it's up too high. And so now when you go to swivel, you're not just hitting right here at the collar, you're hitting, like, you know, almost at the very front. And so you're having problems just getting the thing to swivel around at all. So Tim, creative mechanical guy that he is, figured out that if you take the whole thing off, take this little white piece of plastic, the harness piece that's up at the top here in the middle. Can't really see it too well from where you're seeing from, but it's there. You just pop it up, get it out, and then what he did is he cut through this black piece of harness, which is, you know, black rubber around the outside. That's fine, but the part that he didn't show you in the video is that what's in there is really hard steel coil that coils its way around the rest of the wire. And that stuff is super stiff, super hard, really difficult to cut through. I mean, I was using an angle grinder and having a really tough time because I didn't have the nice little Dremel tool like he had. But even with his tool, man, that must have, he says it took him a half an hour. More like an hour and a half. It took a really long time to get through that stuff. And you want to not hurt the actual line, right? Like, you just, ideally, you just don't want to touch the actual line that's below that. The trick is that the metal that's in there is so sturdy, and it's steel. It's so sturdy that, you know, you get a really tough time getting that out of there. It's just, it's hard. It's really hard work, and that is what makes it not worthwhile to deal with any of this. Because if you're going to fix it and fix it right so that everything actually works, it's just too much. Assuming that you go through with it anyway, you ignore my warnings and you want to go through with it anyway, yeah, if you manage to do this without snapping the line, kudos to you. I didn't snap the line, but I did beat the crap out of it, so it is not silky smooth the way that it should be when it runs through the line. I had to do a little bit of like greasing and repair and kind of, you know, took a blowtorch to burn it down and all kinds of stuff. Not good. None of it's good. It's all bad. Anyway, so if you continue on, the next step is to go to the back, get under the vehicle, go to the back, and you know, you have to adjust the pressure because you've moved the line down 1 inch successfully here at this point, so that you can now swivel. Congratulations, this is all the way down. Both the front and the back are down about 1 inch or half an inch, and you should be able to, you know, put the plastic plate back on. Put the plastic plate back on, and if you want to put the leather thing on top of that, you can certainly do that if you want. But you still have to adjust the back, and that part, if you just do 1 inch, you're okay, because there is a 1 inch wiggle room in the back, and so that's fine. If you do more than 1 inch, like myself, you're going to have all kinds of problems in trying to shorten that line up so that you are within the distance. It's either that or you start drilling holes in the back and putting in more, you know, screws and bolts and all kinds of craziness, so which you don't want to do. So that's that. That's the review. Those are all the problems that I ran into. Things that, you know, were not in other references that I read through. So hopefully that gives you a sense. Again, the conclusion was driver's side, not worth it. Passenger side, easy peasy, looks great, sounds great. So that's it. Hey, I just wanted to give a quick update now that it's been a couple of weeks since I installed the swivel seats and the emergency brake situation. I wanted to put a little note on the template, or the plate, the adapter plate that you stick in between the e-brake and the arm. I put in a single plate that was about a little bit more than 1/4 inch in thickness, and after having done so, I now realize that when I use the emergency brake and push it up and down, it does grind a little bit because it was not 2 by 2 inches. It was a little bit bigger, which you can see in the photos. And the end result is that it does grind a little bit. It's not a smooth transition. So what I realized that if I were to do an adapter plate again, I would double it up on a portion of it and make it make the double portion 1 by 2, and then, you know, probably weld it into place so that the plate goes from being 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch in total thickness in the part that the emergency brake ends up by screwing into at the 1 inch lower mark, and then the top part only being the 1/4 inch thick that screws into the arm. And I think that that would work out better. It would prevent the grinding because now the surface area is basically the same as what is on the arm. So that, after having used it for a couple of weeks, that is my conclusion. I don't think I'm going to bother to fix it at this point, but that would be, if I were to do it again, that's what I would do from the get-go. So that's it, a little update. Other than that, everything's working. All right.